Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you for a moment, because when a man is mentally attached to you, it shows long before he ever says the words. See, men don't attach with their mouths first. We attach with our minds. When a man is mentally connected to you, you don't have to chase him, question him, or beg him to show up. His behavior starts answering questions you never had to ask. A man who is mentally attached to you thinks about you when you're not around. You're not just a moment in his day, you're part of his thoughts. He wonders how you're doing. He remembers what you said. He notices when your tone changes. That's not accidental, that's attachment. When a man is mentally attached to you, you don't have to wonder where you stand in his mind, because you are already there, even when you're not physically present. This kind of attachment shows up in the quiet moments, in the spaces between conversations, in the times when there is no reason for him to think about you, yet he does anyway. You cross his mind while he's driving, working, sitting alone, handling his daily responsibilities. Not because he's forcing the thought, but because your presence has naturally settled into his thinking. He remembers small details about you without effort. Things you casually mentioned weeks ago suddenly come back in conversation. Your likes, your dislikes, the way you react to certain situations. The details matter to him because his mind has tagged you as important. A man who is not mentally attached forgets easily. A man who is attached remembers instinctively. That's how you know the connection has gone deeper than surface level interest. You'll notice that he checks in on you without needing a reason. He might send a message just to ask how your day is going, or call simply because something reminded him of you. These moments aren't about control or obligation. They're about mental presence. When someone lives in your thoughts, silence feels incomplete. Reaching out becomes natural, not forced. A mentally attached man also starts connecting you to his everyday experiences. Something funny happens and you're the first person he wants to tell. Something stressful occurs and your voice becomes calming in his mind. Even when you're not there to offer support, the idea of you provides comfort. That's a powerful sign that his mind associates you with peace, understanding, and emotional safety. He becomes more aware of your emotional state, even from a distance. He can sense when something is off, when your energy shifts, when your responses aren't the same. That awareness comes from mental focus. You don't pick up on changes in someone you're not thinking about. His mind stays tuned to you, even when life is busy. You may also notice that he adjusts his behavior based on how things affect you. He thinks before he speaks. He considers how his actions might make you feel. That level of consideration doesn't come from attraction alone, it comes from attachment. His mind is already factoring you into his choices. When a man thinks about you consistently, he begins to prioritize you mentally. You're no longer competing with distractions, ego, or temporary pleasures. You become a constant reference point. And when a woman becomes a man's mental home, she doesn't have to chase his attention. His thoughts already know exactly where to go. When a man is mentally attached to you, your opinion carries real weight in his life. Not because he feels pressured to agree with you, but because he genuinely respects how you think. He listens when you speak, not just to respond, to understand. Your words don't fall into empty space. They settle in his mind and influence how he sees situations, choices, and even himself. You'll notice that he starts asking what you think before making decisions, both big and small. It could be something simple, like what he should wear, where he should go, or how he should handle a situation at work. These questions aren't about insecurity, they're about trust. When a man values your perspective, it means he believes your insight adds clarity to his life. He doesn't dismiss your thoughts, even when they differ from his own. Instead of becoming defensive or shutting down, he considers your viewpoint. He might pause, reflect, and even change his stance after hearing you. That flexibility is a sign of mental attachment. A man who isn't attached protects his ego. A man who is attached protects the connection. Your opinion also affects how he feels about himself. Compliments from you hit differently. Criticism, when given with care, makes him think instead of react. He doesn't brush it off or label you as too much. Instead, he reflects on it because your voice matters in his internal dialogue. That's when you know you're not just someone he talks to. You're someone he listens to, even in his own mind. A mentally attached man also seeks your approval in subtle ways, not in a needy or dependent manner, but in a way that shows he values being seen positively through your eyes. He wants to know that you respect his decisions, his character, and his direction in life. Your validation becomes meaningful because you've earned a place in his mental space. He starts sharing ideas with you before they're fully formed. Dreams, plans, and thoughts that he hasn't shared with many others come to you first. That's because he trusts your judgment. When a man allows you into the unfinished parts of his thinking, it's a sign that he sees you as a partner in thought, not just in conversation. Even during disagreements, your opinion still matters. He doesn't try to win at the cost of the relationship. He looks for understanding instead of dominance. He may not always agree, but he always considers. That consideration is rooted in respect. And respect is the foundation of mental attachment. When your thoughts influence his choices, his growth, and his direction, it's clear that you hold a meaningful place in his mind. A man who values your opinion isn't just interested in you, he's mentally connected to you. And that connection shapes how he moves through the world. When a man is mentally attached to you, he becomes intentional about protecting what exists between you. He understands, even if he can't fully explain it, that the connection you share is valuable, and valuable things require care. This protection doesn't come from fear or control, it comes from awareness. He knows that emotional bonds can be damaged easily, so he moves differently with you than he does with people who don't matter as much. You'll see this in the way he communicates. He doesn't disappear without explanation. And if he needs space or time, he lets you know. Silence without clarity creates insecurity, and a mentally attached man avoids unnecessary confusion. He respects your emotional well-being because he doesn't want to risk losing the trust that's forming between you. He is also careful with his words. He thinks before speaking, especially during sensitive moments, not because he's walking on eggshells, but because he understands that words can either strengthen or weaken a bond. When a man values a connection, he chooses honesty over games and clarity over manipulation. Protecting the emotional space becomes more important than winning an argument or proving a point. A mentally attached man sets boundaries with others to preserve what he has with you. He doesn't entertain attention that threatens the connection. Even if opportunities arise to flirt, play, or distract himself, he pulls back not because he's forced to, but because he doesn't want anything to interfere with what he's building. That self-restraint is a sign that his mind has already committed to the bond. He also takes responsibility when mistakes happen. Instead of deflecting blame or minimizing your feelings, he acknowledges when something he did caused hurt. Accountability is a form of protection. It shows he values the relationship enough to repair it rather than ignore the damage. A man who isn't attached avoids responsibility. A man who is attached works to restore balance. You may notice that he defends the connection even when you're not around. He doesn't allow others to disrespect you or speak negatively about what you share. That loyalty exists because the bond is real in his mind. He sees the connection as something worth standing up for, not something temporary or replaceable. He also becomes aware of patterns that could harm the relationship and actively avoids them. Whether it's old habits, emotional triggers, or behaviors that create distance, he makes an effort to do better. Growth becomes part of protecting the connection. When a man changes for the sake of emotional stability, it's because he understands the value of what he has. When a man protects the emotional bond, it's clear that the connection has gone beyond surface attraction. His mind recognizes that what you share is meaningful, and he acts accordingly. That level of care isn't accidental. It's the result of deep mental attachment and genuine respect. When a man is mentally attached to you, he begins to open doors he has kept closed for a long time. This openness doesn't happen all at once, and it rarely comes in dramatic emotional speeches. Instead, it shows up gradually in quiet honesty and unguarded moments. He starts letting you see parts of his inner world that most people never get access to. At first, it may come out in small admission. He talks about stress he normally keeps to himself, pressures he carries, or disappointments he hasn't shared with anyone else. For many men, vulnerability doesn't feel natural, it feels risky. So when he chooses to open up to you, it's because his mind has labeled you as safe. Safety is the foundation of mental attachment. He begins to trust you with his fears, not just his strengths. He may talk about past failures, emotional wounds, or moments when he felt inadequate. These are not conversations a man has with someone he's just passing time with. This level of honesty means he believes you won't judge him, belittle him, or use his vulnerability against him. That belief comes from a deep mental connection. You'll notice that he seeks your understanding, not just your attention. He wants you to know why he reacts a certain way, why some topics are difficult, or why certain situations affect him deeply. He explains himself because he cares about how you perceive him. A man who isn't attached doesn't feel the need to be understood. A man who is attached wants emotional clarity. Over time, his communication becomes more expressive. He may not always have the perfect words, but he makes the effort. He tells you when something bothers him instead of shutting down. He shares excitement, pride, and joy, not just stress. That emotional range shows that he's letting you see the full picture of who he is, not a filtered version. A mentally attached man also becomes more emotionally available during your difficult moments. He listens without trying to fix everything immediately. He offers presence instead of distance. His willingness to sit with your emotions reflects his comfort with emotional intimacy. That comfort grows only when his mind feels deeply connected to you. He also reflects on conversations after they happen. He thinks about what you shared, how it made you feel, and how he responded. This self-awareness strengthens the bond because it shows emotional investment. He isn't just talking to talk, he's processing, learning, and growing through the connection. When a man opens up mentally and emotionally, it's one of the clearest signs of attachment. He's not just letting you into his life. He's letting you into his mind. That level of access is rare. And when it happens, it means the connection has become meaningful and deeply rooted. When a man is mentally attached to you, he stops relying on games, mixed signals, and emotional uncertainty to keep your attention. Instead, he chooses consistency. His behavior becomes steady, predictable in a healthy way, and emotionally reassuring. This doesn't mean he becomes boring or robotic. It means he understands that trust is built through reliability, not confusion. You'll notice that his words and actions begin to align. He doesn't say one thing and do another. If he promises to call, he calls. If he says he'll show up, he does. Consistency becomes his silent language of care. A man who isn't attached may rely on charm or intensity. A man who is attached relies on presence and follow-through. He doesn't disappear during difficult moments. When conflict arises, he doesn't withdraw to punish you or create insecurity. Instead, he stays engaged, even if the conversation is uncomfortable. Avoidance is a form of emotional immaturity, and a mentally attached man understands that disappearing only damages the connection he values. So he chooses communication over escape. You'll also notice that he becomes emotionally predictable in a comforting way. His mood toward you doesn't swing wildly based on convenience or attention from others. He doesn't make you feel secure one day and invisible the next. That emotional steadiness comes from intention. He wants you to feel safe, not anxious. A man who values consistency doesn't test your emotions to see how much you care. He doesn't create jealousy to measure your attachment. He doesn't withhold affection as a way to maintain control. Games are tools for insecurity. And when a man is mentally attached, insecurity no longer leads his behavior. Respect does. He also becomes more patient. He understands that emotional bonds grow over time and don't need constant pressure or manipulation. He gives the connection room to breathe without letting it fade. That balance between effort and space reflects maturity and mental investment. When life gets busy or stressful, his consistency remains. He may have less time, but not less intention. He communicates changes instead of leaving you guessing. This transparency is another form of emotional security. A mentally attached man knows that uncertainty creates distance, and he doesn't want distance from you. You may find that his presence becomes grounding. You know where you stand with him. You don't have to decode messages, analyze silence, or question his interest. That peace comes from consistent behavior. When a man chooses reliability over games, it's because his mind has already committed to the connection. Consistency is not accidental, it's a decision. And when a man makes that decision with you, it's a clear sign that his mental attachment has moved beyond attraction into something stable, respectful, and emotionally real. When a man is mentally attached to you, his thinking naturally begins to move forward. And in that forward movement, you are already included. Even if he hasn't clearly defined the relationship or spoken big promises, his language, behavior, and mindset quietly shift. He starts seeing life not as a solo journey, but as something that could be shared with you. You'll notice this first in the way he talks. His words slowly change from I to we. He speaks about future events, ideas, or possibilities and places you inside them without hesitation. It may be something small, like mentioning trips, plans, or goals that involve you indirectly. This inclusion isn't forced, it flows naturally, because his mind has already accepted you as part of his future picture. He begins considering how his decisions will affect you long term. Choices about work, time, priorities, and direction are no longer made in isolation. He thinks ahead. He weighs outcomes. This level of consideration shows that you're no longer just part of his present. You're part of his mental future. A man who isn't attached lives moment to moment. A mentally attached man plans with awareness. You'll also see this in the way he invests in the connection. He puts effort into building something stable rather than chasing temporary excitement. He's willing to have serious conversations, even if they're uncomfortable, because he sees value in clarity. Avoiding the future feels easier, but a man who is attached understands that clarity strengthens what he wants to protect. He starts aligning his actions with long-term values rather than short-term pleasure. He becomes more disciplined, more focused, and more intentional, not because you demanded change, but because he wants to be someone who can sustain the future he's imagining. Mental attachment often inspires growth, and that growth is rooted in vision. A mentally attached man also introduces you into his world in meaningful ways. He may talk about you with people who matter to him, involve you in parts of his life that reflect stability, or slowly integrate you into his routine. These steps are quiet confirmations that his mind has already committed to continuity, not convenience. Even when uncertainty exists, he doesn't treat you like a temporary option. His behavior carries reassurance. He stays consistent, communicates intentions, and avoids actions that could jeopardize the bond. That caution comes from foresight. He understands that the future he's imagining can be affected by present behavior. When a man starts building mental space for you in his future, it means the attachment has reached a deeper level. He's no longer just emotionally present, he's mentally invested in what could be. And when a man sees you in his tomorrow, it's because you've already become important in his today.